On November 16, 2024, millions of viewers tuned in to Miss Universe. Two of the contestants were Alma Cooper from the United States and Jennifer Colon from Puerto Rico. Just by looking at these two distinct contestants, people unfamiliar with the matter may have mistakenly assumed that Puerto Rico is an independent entity. The fact is that Puerto Rico is a United States territory. However, when it comes to certain things, it's treated as if it were a foreign entity. The island receives a fair amount of autonomy, and it's allowed to have its own beauty pageant contestants and sports teams. That's why at the Olympics, you may see Puerto Rican athletes competing against American athletes. However, when it comes to certain issues that affect the daily lives of Puerto Ricans, this autonomy may feel more like exclusion. Just 11 days before the Miss Universe pageant, on November 5, 2024, while the eyes of the world were fixed on the United States presidential election, we saw a map showing the number of electoral votes each state carried, going from as many as 54 in the case of California, to as little as 3 for states such as Alaska, Vermont, and others. On that same map, Puerto Rico is nowhere to be found. Puerto Ricans living on the island can't vote for the president, yet each and every one of them is an American citizen, entitled to the same passport as President Trump himself. We'll talk about Trump's position on making this island a state later in the video. As of 2024, Puerto Rico has no representation in the Senate, and in the House it only has one non-voting resident commissioner, yet federal laws approved by Congress do apply in the island, with few exceptions. Puerto Rico has benefited from generous transfers from the mainland over the decades. Yet it remains much poorer than every single state, including Hawaii, which is another archipelago that happens to be located much further from the mainland than Puerto Rico is. Economic decline has been the norm for the better part of 16 years, and in terms of standard of living, the gap between Puerto Rico and the mainland has widened dramatically. Such a gap was already substantial before things started to get tough for Puerto Rico, but between 2008 and 2022, this territory's GDP contracted by 21%. More than 500,000 Puerto Ricans, or about 15% of the population, left the island during that same period. Most of the immigrants are young professionals. Puerto Rico is the only fast-aging society where outmigration is the largest contributor to population aging, unlike other countries affected by this problem where the main contributor is the declining birth rate. The combination of high levels of outmigration and low birth rates means that the island is getting older much faster than other advanced aging societies like Japan, Korea, or Greece. The island's current status is stated in Spanish as
Estado Libre Asociado,
which translates as Free Associated State. For decades, this status was heralded as the best of both worlds by its proponents. They got to keep their identity as a Spanish-speaking, culturally Latin American society, while at the same time enjoying the benefits of being American citizens. Certain bills gave tax benefits to corporations that set up factories in Puerto Rico, contributing to impressive growth rates for decades. It was easy to be optimistic about the island's future if you lived there from the 50s to the mid-1990s. That optimism has turned to gloom. When a special tax incentive given by Congress to corporations established in Puerto Rico ran out, companies started departing, leaving many unemployed. Successive governments tried to keep the economy afloat by increasing public spending. This was unsustainable, and PR defaulted on a massive debt of $74 billion. This is the largest municipal bankruptcy in the history of the United States. Following the debt crisis, the U.S. government imposed an oversight board on the island, which was basically tasked with managing Puerto Rico's state finances. To many Puerto Ricans, a babysitter had come from the north to make sure the islanders behaved. Then came Hurricanes Irma and Maria, which devastated the island at a time when infrastructure and public services were the weakest after more than a decade of economic stagnation. Then came the 2020 health crisis and made the situation even worse. Today, blackouts have become commonplace, public services have deteriorated considerably, and formerly thriving downtown areas are now dotted with empty storefronts. By United States standards, 45% of the residents of Puerto Rico are living in poverty, but remember, this is when you use US standards. This number is much lower if you apply international standards, and this is something we have to keep in mind. Even after all the economic downturn, this jurisdiction still enjoys higher standards of living than almost any other Latin American country. But when one has been through an 18-year recession with no end in sight, that's a catalyst for trying something different. On the same day that the United States was choosing its new president, Puerto Rico was holding a referendum on whether its residents wanted to become a U.S. state or take the path of independence. Admittedly, this is an oversimplification, and we'll proceed to get into details, but this is what it more or less came down to. Multiple plebiscites have been held in the past on the same subject, But unlike the previous ones, the options for independence came pretty close to amassing half of the total vote. Before 2024, Puerto Rico held 6 votes on the subject of status. In all of them, it was a competition between maintaining the current status quo or becoming a state, with independence getting such a distant third place that many considered it dead. It came as low as 0.6% in 1967 and as high as 5.5% in 2017. To put it bluntly, even when it showed its best performance, it was rejected by 94% of Puerto Ricans who voted. All this has changed dramatically in 2024. Although statehood came up in first place with 56% of the vote, a stunning 30% of voters chose to have a completely independent Puerto Rico, with another 12% choosing to seek a compact of free association with the United States. This last option should be counted as a form of independence. Under this status, Puerto Rico would be a sovereign republic. Those born in PR would no longer be entitled to the U.S. citizenship by birth, and the island would see drastic reductions in terms of the U.S. federal funds going towards its social programs. Under a compact of free association, some aspects of the new republic's administration would be ceded to the United States. We can see how this works in practice in 3 Pacific republics. Palau, the Marshall Islands, and Micronesia operate under this type of arrangement, where the United States is in charge of their defense and gives them monetary assistance, but not of the same magnitude as it gives such aid to territories such as Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, or Guam. Having clarified this, we can assert that the 2 options for an independent Puerto Rico got 42% of the vote. Now here's what's shocking. Independence wasn't promoted extensively by any political party on the island. Because of the poor performance of independence on previous plebiscites, even those political parties who believe in it didn't want to throw their weight at it. They felt that because less than 6% of Puerto Ricans on the island had historically voted for it, any serious promotion of it would bring their gubernatorial and congressional chances down. The Puerto Rican Independence Party asked its supporters to leave their ballot blank in protest. In fact, 15% of the ballots were left blank, yet we can't attribute all of these votes to independence, since another major Puerto Rican political party, the PPD, also asked its supporters to leave their ballot blank. And the PPD defends the current commonwealth status, aiming to just quote-unquote improve it. When you count the votes for the independence options plus the blank ballots, then statehood doesn't get 56% of the vote. This percentage number goes down to 48%. Rather than being a reason to celebrate, this number alone should be keeping the proponents of statehood awake at night. Just think about this for a moment. The U.S. Congress has shown itself reluctant or at least neglectful towards the idea of giving statehood to Puerto Rico. A plebiscite where less than half of the voters show their support for it will not make senators go out of their way to make PR a state. Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell said right after the 2024 election that his party's control in the Senate ensured that filibuster rules were upheld and that new states were not admitted. He declared that this would prevent giving a partisan advantage to the other side, meaning the Democrats. Most analysts agree that an eventual state of Puerto Rico would be a blue state. Historically, Democrat platforms have expressed support for Puerto Rico's self-determination, while the Republicans have stated explicit support for Puerto Rico's statehood. However, on the 2024 Republican Party platform, such explicit support was removed. During his first term, President Donald Trump was criticized by then San Juan Mayor Carmen Yulín Cruz, who attacked his response to Hurricanes Irma and Maria. When President Trump responded to her, he briefly touched on the subject of statehood, quote, "With the mayor of San Juan, as bad as she is and as incompetent as she is, Puerto Rico shouldn't be talking about statehood until they get some people that really know what they're doing. When you have good leadership, statehood for Puerto Rico could be something they talk about. With people like that involved in Puerto Rico, I would be an absolute no," unquote. Following the feud, Jennifer Gonzalez, Puerto Rico's non-voting representative in Congress, tweeted the following, quote, "Equality. Puerto Ricans shouldn't be held up by one bad mayor who's leaving office in 2020 and does not represent the people who voted twice for statehood," unquote. To contribute to the sense of irony, this same Jennifer Gonzalez got elected as the new governor of Puerto Rico, but the new elected commissioner resident, Puerto Rico's non-voting representative, went to Pablo Jose Hernandez from the opposing PPD, a party that supports improving the current commonwealth rather than pushing for statehood. He quickly dismissed the 2024 plebiscite, stating that, quote, "I do not recognize the validity of this plebiscite because it is not binding and because it did not include the option of maintaining and improving the Commonwealth," unquote. That means that there won't be a representative in Congress gathering support for statehood, On the contrary, he will likely discredit the assertion that support for statehood is overwhelming in Puerto Rico. I personally believe that if Puerto Ricans send a clear, unequivocal message to the US that they want to be a state, they would get it. The problem is, that hasn't happened. A number of past plebiscites showing overwhelming support for statehood have been dismissed, and that's because, in all honesty, their organizers set them up in such a way that the results couldn't be trusted. Take for example the one in 2020. Here statehood got 52% of the vote. However, this was a yes or no vote. Many then called for a boycott, stating that a yes or no vote would not reflect the true sentiment of Puerto Ricans, and that instead, a valid plebiscite should measure statehood against other options for Puerto Rico's future, namely independence or staying with the current commonwealth status. This call for boycott may explain the fact that turnout was only 54% of registered voters on this occasion. And let's not even talk about the one in 2017 where statehood got 97% of the vote, with a 22% turnout. If you would allow me to speculate a little, I say that statehood will have a solid chance of making Congress admit PR the day that it gets a good 60% of the vote on a plebiscite with a turnout of 70% or more. As for independence, 50% will suffice to make Washington really contemplate the possibility of letting Puerto Rico go. But in an island that has lived under the comforts of American prosperity and security for so many decades, that's a tall order today, but not so tall in the near future. If the United States doesn't send a signal to Puerto Ricans that statehood is a real possibility, a growing number in the island may conclude that being independent would be a better situation than remaining stuck in the current status of limbo and constant decline. But now please share with us what you think. Would Puerto Rico be better off independent or as a state? Will any of those two happen in this decade? Let us know in the comments. This is Latinometry. Subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any of our interesting videos about Latin America and the world. Please like and share this video, and thanks for watching.